When you think about getting justice for victims, the path formal usually seems pretty clear. But what if the most obvious path isn't actually the best one? Today, we're going to dig into a really controversial legal fight in Japan involving the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, or FFWP. The public is calling for it to be dissolved, but the analysis we're breaking down today suggests a totally different and pretty unexpected way to get victims compensated. And that's really the central question, isn't it? The common thinking is, of course, to help the victims, you have to get rid of the organization. But the whole argument we're looking at today flips that idea completely on its head. It claims that to truly get money to victims, the organization might actually need to stick around. I know, it sounds kind of backward, so let's see how they make that case. Okay, so let's dive into the first big piece of this argument. It all centers on a new system that the organization itself set up back in October 2023. We're talking about a compensation committee built specifically to handle claims from former members and, well, to pay them back. And get this is the committee's official guiding principle. The source really highlights this quote to show that the committee's goal isn't just to scrape by on the bare legal minimum. What they're saying is, look, we're not just going to follow the letter of the law. Even if a claim is technically too old, past the statute of limitations, if it seems probable that a wrong was done, we're going to try and make it right. Now, a key question is, can we trust this committee? I mean, it was set up by the organization, right? Well, the source makes a big deal about who's on it. We're talking about some really high-profile independent legal figures, including a former governor and ex-members of the Diet. The whole point is to frame this not as some internal PR stunt, but as a credible third-party group that can make its own calls. So fine, the committee sounds impressive, but does it actually have any teeth? Is real money changing hands? Well, the source material argues yes, absolutely, and jumps right into the numbers to prove it. So let's take a look. First up, the source points to almost 3.5 billion yen paid out through these big formal group mediations. This was a series of settlements with a large bunch of claimants. Think of this as the baseline. This was money that was already being paid out before this new independent committee even got up and running. But that's not all. On top of those formal mediations, the source points to another 6.9 billion yen. This was in the form of direct refunds to almost 1,000 former members. So the idea here is that there's a much broader effort to return money that's happening outside of those big publicized settlements. And here's the crucial point. When you add it all up, the total payout is over 10 billion yen. To put that in perspective, that's around 65 million US dollars. It's a huge amount, and this number is the key piece of evidence the source uses to argue that a real, functioning system for victim compensation is already in place and delivering, all without the government needing to issue a dissolution order. So, how does all this financial activity become a legal defense? Well, this is where the analysis pivots to a core constitutional argument. It all hangs on a legal idea called the proportionality principle, which becomes super important anytime a government action could restrict a fundamental right, like, say, freedom of religion. So what on earth is this principle? Well, to put it simply, it's basically a test that courts use to balance the government's goals against the rights of people. They have to ask, is what the government is doing a reasonable and necessary way to fix a problem, or is it going way too far? And this whole principle really boils down to three key questions a court has to ask. First, suitability. Is dissolving the organization even the right tool for helping victims? Second, necessity. Is it the least extreme option on the table? And third, balance. Does the good that comes from dissolving it actually outweigh the harm it does to religious freedom? And this right here is the absolute heart of the source's legal claim. It argues that a dissolution order fails that critical second test, the test of necessity. And why? Because, as we just saw with all those numbers, they claim there's already another, less extreme method in place, the compensation system, which is actively getting money to victims. So the most drastic step, dissolution, isn't legally necessary. This legal argument leads us straight into what the source presents as a huge paradox. It basically asks, what if the very act meant to deliver justice, dissolving the organization, completely backfires and makes it harder for victims to ever see their money again? This slide really lays out the two paths they describe. On one side, if the organization survives, the argument is that the compensation committee can keep doing its thing, offering flexible payments even beyond the law. But on the other side, dissolution. That triggers a really rigid formal liquidation process where assets could get locked up and future claims might just hit a brick wall. And listen, this isn't just some theoretical worry. The source backs this up by quoting the Japan Federation of Bar Associations. We're talking about the country's top legal body. And even they've warned that the current laws for liquidating a religious group are totally insufficient and could actually get in the way of helping victims. So what makes it so tough? Well, the analysis highlights some huge hurdles. The court-appointed liquidator would have no legal power to force former executives to cooperate or tell them where any assets are hidden. On top of that, the rules for how to distribute any money they do find are really murky and might not put victims at the front of the line. It could just become a bureaucratic nightmare. Okay, so we've looked at the compensation system, we've walked through the constitutional argument, and we've seen the potential dangers of dissolution. So where does this all land? What's the final conclusion on the best path forward? And here it is, laid out plain and simple. The core thesis of this whole analysis is that the most practical, most effective way to make sure victims get paid is to let the organization continue to exist, but only if its independent compensation system keeps running and paying claims. The argument is that this path provides a direct line to relief that would just be completely destroyed by dissolution. And that brings us to the fundamental question at the heart of this whole debate. This analysis really forces us to weigh two different values against each other: the powerful symbolic act of justice versus the practical path to actually getting money into victims' hands. It's a complex ethical and legal mess with no easy answers, and it's definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for digging into this with me.